The topic we're about to discuss could be a class in and of itself. We're going to go through a couple of different ways that we could go about finding different pieces of malicious software on a box. Now, in our case, the malicious software has already been there, and sometimes we're going to find things and sometimes we're not. And we're going to go through a bunch of different things. This class, as I said, this video, next set of videos, is going to be a very small subset of what you can actually do, because really the number of ways you can search for malware on a box is virtually infinite. You could go about it in many different ways. Not only can you search for different types of malware, but you can search for the same kind of malware multiple different ways. And that's a good thing, because sometimes different malware authors do things differently, and being able to come at it from several different angles may mean you find it one way where you don't find it in another. It doesn't matter how you find it, because once you find it, you can use Storyline to pull out all of the related activities. But the big deal is that you do find something. So let's look at a couple of different options that we can do to search for things in the computer. Let's start out with registry items. The registry is obviously a Windows-only thing, and it is both good and bad, because it is the centralized database of all the things that are going on inside a Windows box. The problem with the Windows registry is that it is in certain cases deliberately designed to be obfuscative and difficult to understand. But in the end, there are tools that you can utilize outside of us and Singularity's tools to get even more information out of the registry. But as quick and dirty searches, then it is a good place to go. One thing you can do is you can look for specific types of keys. Here's an example where I looked for the PSEXE-SVC key. And the reason why I searched for this key was because anytime you use the PSEXE command, the PSEXE service actually is created on the endpoint. And so if I actually do a search for this, I get 25 results. Now, they're all registry keys, obviously, because, of course, the registry is the only thing that we're going to have registry key paths in, so that's the only object we're going to get. As long as I understand that that's the only object that's going to come back, then this is not going to be a surprising search. As we can see, we've got one example, DV example 1224, which has these registry key values. And if we open this up, we notice that many of them are the same: registry key path, control set services, PSEX type. Now, this doesn't necessarily give us all the information we need. It just tells us that somebody ran PSEXE on this box. So the question then becomes, who did and for what? So what we're going to do, and this is going to be the common theme for all of these things, once we find some interesting data, and this is certainly interesting, the fact that somebody ran PSExec, I'm going to suggest that I do not run PSExec in the common functionality of this box, so the fact that it's run at all interests me. So what do you do when you find something that interests you? As we talked about in the presentation at the beginning, you check out to see what storylines are in existence around that particular thing. So if you scroll over, you'll see here source, process, storyline ID. If I click the funnel, this is just a quick and dirty way to do this. This will give you all of the different storylines that are involved here. As you can see, there are two, the 654E9 and the 1F3086. So what I would do at this point is I would select the circle next to one of the storylines, go to the ellipsis, and say create new query from selected value. Now, since we have two, I would do the same thing for this value as well. Create a second query for this one. Now, this is more of a helpful hint, and this is something that I commonly do. Notice that we've got because of what I've done, I specifically selected the field source process storyline ID, and then I checked it off and I said, show me a new query based on this. And it dutifully created a new query where it says source process storyline ID is equal to that value. Now I can run this, and there's nothing wrong with running this, but I'm going to suggest that you might want to make one change. And that's this. I'm going to eliminate source process. And notice it accepts that. Storyline ID is, in and of itself, a search term. It is known as a shortcut search term. If you actually look through the fields that exist inside the records, there is source storylines and target storylines. And that's going to show the relationship between various storylines that we see on the system. And given that relationship, that means that we could have this storyline appear as either the source storyline or the target storyline. And you can put in there an entire thing. You could actually say, show me storyline ID. Instead of this, you can say, show me let me do it this way. A tab. And so we got source and target. I could say, show me the source storyline ID. And then I can say, and I can then put in this again. Only this time, get rid of this and choose target storyline ID. I can do this. There's nothing wrong with this other than it's going to have to be in both. So technically what I should actually say is this, or. So I want this storyline ID to be either in source or target, and this will bring up a much larger group of storylines and events. Though there's a shortcut for doing this, and that's exactly what I was just saying. I don't have to do all of that. I can get rid of this whole or thing. And if I just say storyline ID, like this shortcut variable will search all storyline fields, and if this value appears there, it'll bring it back. Now I'm going to bump this up to 20,000 events. I'm going to only load the priority fields at the moment, and I'm going to click on the search button. So in this case, this storyline only brought back a total of 83 events. This is actually really good because this is telling me that I have a very succinct number of events. There's 2 processes, 4 cross processes, 2 indicators, 2 files, 17 registry entries, and 56 modules. Remember, modules are not always as useful as they claim to be. I mean, they basically give you some information about what's going on. But they're talking more like, what did you load? to get things to work. We'll look at a situation later where modules do become important, but for the most part, you can ignore them. So which two processes do we have? Well, we've got two process creations. We've got NA and PSExec service.exe, which then ran the GANCrab.exe. And obviously GANCrab.exe is bad news, but here we go. We've got what's going on here. We have a couple of indicators that go along with this. The indicators are application registered itself to become persistent via a service, privilege escalation, persistence, and ran, this is what was going on. So the indicators show that the application registers itself as a service, and that will try to escalate privilege and be persistent. Though this all goes together, because when you register yourself as a service, you are telling the system, hey, I want to run as an elevated level, and I want to run on a regular basis. So that's exactly what happened when we created the GANCrab solution. But PSExec is what normally, when you run PSExec, this is the service that's created on the remote machine. So this was clearly run from somewhere else and run here. Other than that, we've got some process information. We have two files that one got created and one got deleted. And we have more registry items that got basically created, modified. And if we want to see what's going on, you can come over here and look at what's going on. And it's going to be all of the registry entries having to do with creating the service for PSExec. And these are the modules that got run. And you'll notice that most of them are pretty normal modules. They're all coming out of the syswal64. These are actual DLL files that GANCrab or PSExec utilize to actually function. So there's nothing outside of what's really normal as we come down through here. So that's not really giving me any sort of useful information. Cryptbase.dll will tell us that whatever executed was using encryption technology. Well, that makes sense. It's GANCrab ransomware. So this is a very common thing that you see in those cases. All right, let's move on to the other one. Maybe this will give us more information. So again, eliminate the beginning of this so that we see the storyline across both any situation, and run this. Oh, I forgot. Looks like it's okay. Usually, if you don't modify the max results, you end up with a problem. This one has a lot more processes, 164 processes, and a lot of registry keys, and 2 logins. The logins are very interesting because the logins are showing where this came from. Check this out. User anonymous login, source IP address, FE80DCEB. Here, this is a IPv6 address of the machine that originated the command. Now we know which machine on our network did this. We're investigating Windows 10 Victim 2. We know that because of the name at the beginning here. It tells us on the right-hand side, this is DV example 1224, and victim 1 is DV example 1223. I know that because we set the lab up that way. Now, victim 2 is where this was taking place. This is where the storyline takes place. Note that a storyline is machine specific. Because remember, a storyline is generated when a process is created and then run. So in this case, the process that was created got this ID and a process only runs on one machine at a time. If a process runs multiple times on the same machine, you'll get different storyline IDs. But this one's really good because now we're seeing where it came from. So we know where the attack comes from. So if I look back at my SkyTap machine, we're all encrypted at this point. But if I do so ipconfig gives me the link local IPv6 address, which is FE80 DCEB 84B5 14DC 638E for some reason %12. And if I go back here, 638E. 638E. So now we know which machine started this attack. Of course, then what I would do is I'd say, okay, we know now that at 6:13 and 57 seconds that the attack came from this source IP address. So I would start doing more searches for a source machine IP of this, or since I know what that system is, I know the name of the system is here. So I know that DV example 1223 was the one who initiated this. And so I'd start looking around to see who and when the attack was run. Let's go at this another way. What are other things we can look for in the registry? Let's actually go into the system here, and I'll go into regedit. Remember, we can look at paths. And if I open up this one, this is a prime example of some place which you might want to go into. Here's a path, computer HKey current user, Microsoft current version run once, to see if there's any new entries that have happened in the last couple of days or couple of hours. In this case, we're not going to find any, but this would be a great place to go. What would you do? Again, it would be very similar. Registry key path contains any case, and you could pick out run once as the key. Now that one's a pretty good one. Run works as well, but run there, that'll actually come up in different places. And this is one of those times when if you actually choose run like this, you're going to need to have more data there. So you might want to grab as much of this as you can, software, Microsoft Windows current version run, and say contains all of this. That way you actually have a good shot at getting only information that happens in this particular folder and not other places in the registry. Other places you could go would be something like Microsoft, Windows, current version, and then schedule. Another place you could go would be the local machine software, Microsoft, Windows NT, current version, scheduled task cache. New items in this area would be new scheduled events that have been in here. You could also go and look inside the tree version as well and see if there's any new items in this area. Now, you're not going to be able to read this. The data is obfuscated, and you'd have to actually have a tool to be able to parse this to see what the data actually is. But knowing that there is a new value that was placed in this area may be enough for you to say, hey, wait, something created a task and I want to go look at what. This also isn't necessarily the easiest way to go about this, but not a bad place to go looking for things. There are a myriad of other things that you could possibly look for inside the registry, and depending on the unique types of malware that are out there, they may create different keys or place different values in different places. And then you can go and search for them utilizing either the keys or the values here in Deep Visibility. Again, once you find something, just like we did here, you'll go back and look for its storyline ID and try to identify what actually happened around that event.